The man nobody wanted. The wind whispered secrets through the tall grasses of Moloko, a village tucked between rolling hills and the shadows of Nzailayoma, the ancient forest whose trees reached toward the heavens like gnarled fingers. The villagers believed the forest to be alive, not just with creatures, but with spirits, old, watchful, and easily angered. In a mud brick hut on the village's farthest edge, Baraka awoke as he did every morning, long before the sun dared climb over the horizon. His fingers were stiff with age and old injuries, and his knees crackled like dry maize stalks. He wrapped a faded kiten shawl around his thin shoulders and stepped out into the cold mist. No one greeted him. No one ever did. Baraka was 60 years old, a widower, and alone. The villagers whispered his name like a curse. Children were told not to go near his hut, lest the man with forgotten sins pass his misfortune on to them. Once, he had been Baraka the Strong, a hunter and story keeper of Moloko. But something had changed. 20 years ago, he was exiled, the reasons buried beneath years of silence and death. When he returned 5 years ago, the sky wept with a thunderstorm unlike any in living memory. Lightning split trees, and rain destroyed the year's harvest. Cows miscarried, children fell ill, and the villagers looked for someone to blame. Baraka had come back. Baraka became the cursed one. Since then, he lived by the forest edge, growing his own food and talking only to birds, wind, and fire. His only company was memory, and even that betrayed him often. Whispers of storm and blame. On the day the story truly begins, the air in Moloko was heavy, pressing down like a lid on a boiling pot. Even the goats seemed uneasy. Women pounding millet in rhythm paused when they saw Baraka walking to the stream with his water god. Their eyes narrowed, one woman clutched her baby tighter. A group of men sat beneath the village's only baobab tree. Their voices were low but bitter. He returned, and everything died, muttered old Tembo, shaking his calabash of palm wine. If we let him stay, the spirits will destroy what little we have left. But he has done nothing, one man dared to say. Exactly, said another. That's what makes it worse. He lives while others perish. Baraka passed them silently. He knew better than to defend himself. Words were wasted on people who had already judged you. But even he couldn't deny the feeling that something watched him from the shadows, not the villagers, but something far older. Nzailayoma's cry. That night, Baraka stoked a small fire in his hut. A stew of wild yam and herbs simmered gently as he hummed an old lullaby his wife used to sing. Outside, the forest groaned with wind. Then it happened. A sound. Not the call of a hyena. Not the growl of a lion. Not even the eerie giggle of a night spirit. It was a scream. But not human. Not entirely. Baraka froze. Again, it came, high-pitched, choking, pained. He rose, grabbing the staff he always kept by the door. His knees protested, but something in the cry pierced his bones. It was not curiosity that pulled him, but compassion, the kind that defies logic, fear, or the wrath of gods. Torch in hand, he made his way toward the edge of Nzailayoma, where the trees gathered like a secret council. The fallen tree. The forest welcomed him with silence, no crickets, no wind, only the beat of his heart. Then he saw it. A massive tree, its roots twisted like broken limbs, had fallen across the underbrush. Beneath it lay a figure, barely moving. Baraka's breath caught. It was a woman. Or at least, part of her was. Her face was unmistakably human, with dark brown skin smeared with dirt and blood, high cheekbones, and long braided hair matted with leaves. Her arms were thin, delicate. But from the waist down, Baraka staggered back. She was serpent, glimmering scales of emerald and black curled where legs should be. Her long tail, nearly 6 feet, was coiled around the shattered trunk, twitching weakly. He had heard the old legends of Nkosi, the forest guardians. half woman, half serpent, born of earth and rain. Spirit of protection and wrath. But no one had seen one in living memory. They were bedtime stories, warnings. And now one lay dying at his feet. Blood oozed from her side where the tree had crushed her ribs. Her eyes fluttered open. Pupils slit like a snake's, but rimmed with human sorrow. "Help me," she rasped, in a voice that scratched like thorns on wood. Baraka did not move. His fingers trembled. He should run. He should call the elders. He should bow and pray and leave her. But he stepped forward. "Hold on," he whispered. "I'm going to lift it." He used every ounce of strength he had, leveraging the staff on his shoulder. The tree groaned as it shifted. She let out a shriek as her body slid free. She collapsed onto the forest floor, blood soaking into the soil. Baraka dropped beside her, panting. "I have to carry you," he said. She nodded once. "You are not afraid?" He paused. "I am. But I will help you anyway." He wrapped her in his shawl, lifting her carefully. Her weight was odd, both light and coiled, her scales cold against his skin. And with that, Baraka carried a forest spirit into the village of people who wanted nothing to do with him. They walked back. Every step toward the village felt like a rebellion. He knew what the villagers would say if they saw her. They would blame him. Call him a summoner of spirits. They might burn his hut. Or worse, kill her. But what choice did he have? "I'll keep you hidden," he whispered to her as he approached his hut. "You'll be safe, I promise." She stirred slightly. "You are different." "I'm just alone," he muttered. Inside his hut, he laid her on his sleeping mat. Her breathing was shallow. Her wound looked worse in the firelight. He didn't know medicine for serpent folk. But he cleaned the blood, applied crushed bark and herbs, and wrapped her side with strips of cloth. She winced, but said nothing. All night, he sat by her side, torch flickering, listening to the distant drums of the village. A child cried. A dog barked. Somewhere far away, thunder rumbled. She opened her eyes once. "What is your name, old one?" He smiled faintly. "Baraka." She nodded slowly. "I am Naena." And then she slept. The risk and the beginning. When dawn broke, golden light bathed the forest and village. Birds chirped. Smoke rose from cooking fires. But at the edge of Moloko, inside a forgotten hut, a man the world had thrown away had done something unspeakable. He had saved the spirit. A creature feared and worshipped. He had made himself an enemy of superstition, of fear, of the villagers, and possibly even of the forest itself. But for the first time in years, Baraka felt something other than shame. He felt needed. And that was the beginning of everything, the serpent in human skin. The days that followed were like the pause between lightning and thunder, charged with tension, full of questions, and quietly, impossibly miraculous. Baraka awoke each morning to silence, not the cold, resentful silence of villagers avoiding him, but a stillness thick with wonder. Something had shifted. Something was watching. And it was watching from inside his hut. She no longer bled. The woman, no, the serpent spirit, rested beneath his woven blankets, her skin warmer now, her breathing steady. Her half-serpent tail had retreated, curling beneath her like a sleeping vine. But her upper body, her face, especially, was human. And beautiful. Not with the youth of smooth skin or bright eyes, but with a strange, untouchable wisdom. The kind that makes you forget to breathe when you look too long. When she finally spoke, days after he brought her from beneath the fallen tree, her voice was softer, more certain. "I am Linda now," she said, her gaze fixed on the firelight. "That was not the name you told me," Baraka replied gently. "It was the name I wore while bleeding." This one is mine. The one I remember. She never spoke of where she truly came from until the third night. The River of Bones. Rain had begun to fall across Moloko. But it fell around Baraka's hut, never on it. Thunder roared. Water sloshed into the village gardens. But inside, the thatched roof remained bone dry. Even the palm leaves lining the walls didn't stir. Baraka watched this with quiet alarm. Then Lindawe, sitting up, spoke without turning her head. I came from beneath the River of Bones. Baraka's spoon froze halfway to his mouth. That's a story, he whispered. She turned, her snake-slit pupils meeting his. Only to those who've never drowned in it. He said nothing. She continued. There is a place where forgotten souls drift, those taken too soon, or cursed too deeply. They sing to the stones and to the bones of the drowned. I was born there. Not of a mother, not of a father, but from sorrow that refused to sleep. Baraka swallowed. Why were you above the ground then? Linda tilted her head. Because the ground cracked. Something pulled me up, something old and angry. I fled. But I was too weak. She looked away then. And then you found me. Baraka felt his heart thud in his chest. He should be terrified. But strangely, he wasn't. Wounds that heal too fast. By the fourth day, her wound, once jagged and soaked in blood, had faded into nothing more than a pale scar. Her tail no longer dragged across the floor but moved with strength and grace. When she walked, still cloaked in his oversized shawls, her footsteps made no sound. And animals followed her. Birds perched near his windows. A fox once sat calmly at the threshold. Frogs croaked in rhythm when she hummed. At night, a ring of fireflies glowed around the hut, though none ever entered. Baraka noticed something else too. His old pain, his knee, his twisted shoulder, the aches that haunted him every morning, they were gone. Is this your doing? He asked her one morning as she stirred tea over the fire. She looked at him. Smiled faintly. I don't hurt what feeds me, she said. He didn't ask what she meant. The villagers stirred. They noticed the change. Children whispered that the old man no longer limped. Crops near his hut, once stunted, now grew taller and greener than the rest of the village. Goats born near his fence were unusually healthy. Some called it luck. Others called it a curse. One night, Baraka woke to the sound of shouting. He peeked through the window slats. Flames danced in torches. A group of men stood at the edge of his fence, faces twisted in suspicion. You've brought something evil here, Baraka. A demon disguised as a woman. We saw the foxes. The birds. Rain avoids your roof. We should burn it. Cleanse the land. Baraka stepped outside slowly, arms raised. I've done nothing, he said. No spells, no blood, no harm. But they were too far gone for reason. Someone hurled a stone. It hit the wall. Another struck the door. A few young men began smashing his fence. Then, a hiss. Long low. Cold as ice. From behind Baraka, Linda stepped into the open. She looked human. But her eyes were not of this world. The crowd stilled. The fire dimmed. The torches flickered. Then, Linda smiled. Leave him, she said. Not shouted, said. But the words were like thunder. Leave now, before the forest remembers what you've forgotten. One by one, the men stepped back. Even old Tembo turned and muttered prayers as he stumbled away. Soon, only silence remained. The revelation. Baraka sat outside his hut that night, staring at the stars. His heart thudded from the encounter. His hut was vandalized, broken pots, torn thatch, but it still stood. Behind him, Linda emerged. Her shawl slipped from her shoulders, revealing silver scales crawling up her sides like armor. Her legs were gone. Where once stood a woman now slithered a serpent, tall and regal, tail coiling with ancient grace. Her skin shimmered like moonlight on river stones. He turned and faced her, eyes wide. Not with fear, but with something deeper. "Oh, do you fear me now?" she asked softly, her voice echoing like wind through a cave. Baraka stared. Then rose. "I have feared many things," he said. "Disease. Betrayal. Hunger. The way people smile and lie. But no, not you." She blinked. "Why not?" He stepped closer. "Because only those who pretend to be kind frighten me." "You have not pretended." Linda studied him for a long time. Then, with a grace no human possessed, she leaned forward. She pressed her cool lips to his forehead. A tingling warmth spread through Baraka's chest, as if his ribs had been hollow all these years and were now being filled. She whispered, "You will be king. Where others cast you aside. The sky remembers." That night, the clouds split above Moloko. Rain fell across the fields and houses, but not a single drop touched Baraka's heart. The old tree at the center of the village, dry for decades, bloomed with white flowers before morning. And deep within Nzala-Yoma, a tremor stirred the forest floor, as if something ancient had awoken, and turned its gaze toward the man nobody wanted, the forest that breathed. The air was different beyond the edge of Nzala-Yoma. Not just the scent, though the trees oozed with a syrupy musk and the ground steamed with dew. Not just the silence, though no human songs had echoed here in generations. The very breath of the place felt thick, alive, as if the forest inhaled and exhaled with every step Baraka took. Linda walked, glided ahead of him, her serpent body leaving no trail. The green light beneath the canopy danced across her scales. She turned occasionally to guide him, her hand outstretched. Each time Baraka touched her fingers, a new sensation bloomed in his chest, like heat and memory stirred into one. Behind him, the village of Moloko disappeared, swallowed whole by trees that grew impossibly tall and wide, their bark veined with light, their roots pulsing like heartbeats. They were entering her world now. The hidden realm. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time twisted here. Hunger did not know, and thirst faded like a forgotten dream. Finally, they reached a clearing where the trees formed a perfect circle. At its center, a pond glowed silver and breathed mist into the air. Baraka gasped. A great python lay coiled on a smooth stone, its eyes glowing violet. Birds with jewel-feathered wings perched on branches, speaking in riddles. A tortoise as large as a stool blinked slowly and murmured prayers to the sky. Small spirit keepers, no taller than children but with faces painted like masks, danced in slow spirals, humming a song only the leaves seemed to understand. "This is where the broken are reborn," Linda whispered beside him. "Where memories live without shame. Where the forest chooses its guardians." Baraka took a trembling step forward. The ground under his feet trembled, as if recognizing him. He gasped as a pulse of warmth raced through his spine, spreading through his limbs. The cane he had always carried slipped from his hand. He didn't need it anymore. "What is happening to me?" he asked. Linda smiled gently. "You are becoming. The forest remembers your kindness. It rewards those who do not walk past the wounded." Baraka looked down at his hands. They were steady. No longer shaking. His fingers no longer gnawed. His knees, once stiff with age, now bent smoothly as he crouched to touch the glowing grass. A single tear ran down his cheek. The language of trees. Over the next days, Baraka walked among the spirits and creatures. Linda taught him how to listen, not with ears, but with breath. "Close your eyes," she said one evening beneath a canopy of silver leaves. "Feel the roots. They carry words. Feel the wind." It holds secrets. And he did. Soon, he could hear the trees sigh when animals passed. He understood the warnings in the hiss of the grass. He knew when the rains would come simply by tasting the air. His eyes began to glow faintly at night. His scars faded. His voice deepened, not with age, but with resonance, like wood hollowed into an instrument. The forest had accepted him. And then, she crowned him the guardian of the boundary. One dusk, when mist blanketed the trees and the spirits stood in silent rings, Linda summoned him to the sacred pond. In her hands was a circlet of woven gold vine and serpent scale. She placed it on Baraka's head. It paused once, warm and heavy. "You are now the guardian of the boundary," she said. "Protector between the world of man and the realm of the unseen. You will walk both, and answer to both." Baraka bowed, unsure if he should speak. Linda reached forward and pressed her forehead to his. "You are no longer the man they cast out," she whispered. "You are the bridge they will need, though they may still despise you." The creatures around the pond began to sing, not in words, but in harmony. The trees swayed with the rhythm. And for the first time in his long, burdened life, Baraka felt like he belonged. The one who mocked him. Days passed. Baraka now wandered the outer edges of the forest freely, unseen by most. His senses had sharpened. He could hear the breath of mice beneath the earth. He could smell sorrow on the wind. And that's when he saw her. It was near a stream not far from the village boundary. A young woman knelt near the water, plucking herbs with practiced hands. Her eyes darted nervously, but she did not see him. She was thin but strong, her hair coiled tightly, her mouth pressed in a determined line. She had once been a child who laughed at his ragged clothes. She had called him Ghostman when he passed. Years ago, she had thrown stones at his hut. But now she was here. Alone. Picking healing herbs she shouldn't know existed. Why is she here? Baraka wondered. Linda had warned him. The forest opened only to those it permitted. How had Nolia found this stream? Then he remembered something she had once said as a child, during a rainstorm. "I follow the smell of green places." Perhaps she had always been drawn to this place. He should have turned away. But he didn't. He crouched behind a thicket and watched her wipe sweat from her brow, watched her whisper to a sprig of moonroot before tucking it into her pouch. And then something stirred in him, something old, something buried. Longing. The seed of betrayal. He could have revealed himself. Called out. Warned her. Asked why she had come. But he didn't. Instead, he watched her leave. Watched her braid her hair with a strip of vine. Watched her pause at the edge of the clearing and look back, as if she sensed someone. She stared right through him. Then turned and vanished into the trees. Baraka stood motionless. Around him, the forest paused. But this time, the rhythm had changed. It was no longer the heartbeat of rebirth. It was a warning. A whisper. Do not forget who you were. Do not forget who you've become. He pressed a hand to the crown still resting on his head. It glowed faintly. The warmth comforted him. And yet, as night fell, Baraka found himself returning to that stream again. And again. Each time, Nolia came. Each time, she did not see him. And each time, his heart swelled with something that felt like hunger, but not for food. She was beautiful, he told himself. She had changed. But the forest is not a place for lies. Even the ones we tell ourselves. Linda knew. That night, she found him sitting by the edge of the guardian pool, staring at his reflection. Your crown shines less when you look backwards, she said softly. He looked up at her, startled. I haven't done anything. She tilted her head. Not yet. But even the smallest root cracks stone, if left to grow. Ending scene. He didn't sleep that night. He sat at the boundary of the forest, staring at the path that led to the village. He could feel her scent lingering in the wind. He could almost hear her laugh in the distance. The forest behind him whispered. The world ahead of him beckoned. And somewhere in between, the man who had once been invisible was now seen. Not by the spirits. Not by Lindau. But by temptation. And so, the first shadow was cast upon his crowned daughter, taste of the old world. It was early morning when Baraka crossed the threshold of Nzala in human form for the first time since his exile. He had not asked permission. Behind him, the forest paused with slow disapproval, but he ignored it. His feet touched the dirt road that led to Moloko, the same path he had once walked in shame, his back bent, his shoulders hunched beneath the weight of silence. But now, he stood tall. His skin, once wrinkled and dry, now glowed like fresh bark. His eyes held light beneath them, a flicker of silver that danced when he blinked. His gait was strong, his voice deeper, smoother, resonant like a drum. He wore simple robes, yet they shimmered faintly, dusted with forest light. No one knew who he was. Not even Nolia, who stood near the communal well when he entered. Whispers of a stranger. The village gasped when they saw him. Children ran behind houses to peek through doorways. Women clutched their necklaces, murmuring prayers. Elders squinted from their stools, whispering names from old tales. Is he a prince? A spirit? A traveler from across the sea? Maybe a merchant, or a lost heir? Baraka said nothing. He gave no name. The village offered him food and shade. They begged him to rest. Young men followed him, asking for wisdom. Girls giggled behind baskets of cassava. And Nolia, the one who once called him cursed, was the first to offer her hand. Welcome, stranger, she said with a smile. You walk like you own the wind. Baraka only nodded. And you, he said, smile like someone who once heard the forest sing. Her cheeks flushed. She did not remember the old man who walked hunched through the marketplace, whose hut they had once painted with ashes. And Baraka did not remind her. The mask of lies. Over the next months, Baraka allowed the lie to grow. He said he came from beyond the western hills, where the stars touched the ocean. He claimed he had wandered for years, learning the ways of nature and spirit. He never gave a name. People called him Temi, chieftain. Nolia was enthralled. She followed him through the market, brought him bowls of roasted yam, sat beside him at evening fires. Baraka watched her laughter like a man starved for song. And though guilt gnawed at his spine, the ache of being wanted once more drowned it. One night, she whispered, I dreamed of you before you came. In the dream, she said, you stood in the forest, crowned with vines, calling my name. And when I reached you, you turned and became the river. Baraka shivered. He should have stopped it. But instead, he touched her cheek and said, then let me be your river. And so the village planned a wedding. Lindau's warning. On the eve of the ceremony, Baraka could not sleep. The drums of celebration pounded through the night. Nolia lay beside him in her hut, her head on his chest, whispering dreams of the future. But when Baraka closed his eyes, he entered a different realm. The forest. He stood beneath the ancient tree of oath keepers, its roots twisted like arms in pain. And there, shrouded in mist, stood Lindau. She did not speak at first. Her eyes were wide with sorrow, her lips trembling like a branch in wind. You used the gift of the forest to wear another face, she finally said. Not to heal. Not to protect. But to be loved by one who spat on your name. Baraka opened his mouth to argue, but his voice cracked. She doesn't remember, he said. She's changed. Lindai stepped forward. Her serpent tail curled tightly behind her, her arms crossed over her chest. But you remember. And yet you let her build dreams on sand. The dream darkened. The tree wept up. And Linda's voice was soft, barely a whisper now. You were chosen by the forest. Now, you choose a mask. Baraka fell to his knees in the dream. Forgive me. Linda bent down and kissed his forehead, just like the day he found her. It is not my forgiveness you will need, she said. It is hers, the one you have awakened beneath the river of bones. He gasped. But she was gone. The wedding night. Morning came, hot and silent. The drums returned, louder than before. The village gathered in a circle. Palm fronds and marigolds adorned every hut. Goats bleated as offerings were made. Children threw petals at the bride and groom. Baraka stood in finely woven cloth, beside Nolia, whose face glowed with hope. He said the vows. He drank the wine. He smiled when they called him blessed. But even as he held her hand, he felt the ground hum beneath his feet, not with joy, but with warning. That night, the two lay in the marriage hut. Oil lamps flickered. Nolia traced circles on his chest, whispering of children and gardens and building a future. Baraka smiled faintly, holding her, but his eyes stared at the thatched ceiling above. Then, a hiss. It came low at first, like wind through reeds. Then louder. More primal. The oil lamps died. The wind screamed. And then, blackness. The skies above the village turned as dark as pitch. The moon vanished. The stars blinked out one by one. A pressure descended, heavy, ancient, furious. And from beneath the soil came a sound like thunder cracked in half. The villagers poured into the streets, torches raised, screaming. From the western horizon, a wall of mist crept toward them, shimmering like scales. And inside that mist, eyes. So many eyes. Baraka rushed outside, clutching Nolia to his chest. And in the darkness, from somewhere deep inside the fog, a voice whispered through the village. Guardian who wears the mask. You have forgotten the pact. Baraka dropped to his knees. The crown of forest light on his head flickered once. And went dark, when the forest weeps. It began with a whisper beneath the soil. Then the ground shuddered, as though it wept. Within a day, the sky stayed short, withholding sun and moon alike. Winds blew backward, rivers curled away from their banks and vanished into dust. The once lush field of Moloko shriveled to ash. Goats birthed stillborn kids. Birds died mid-flight. And children, bright-eyed, carefree children, fell ill with no wound or wound healer to explain it. The elders wept and consulted the bones. They found only silence. It was as though Nzala Yoma, the sacred forest, had turned its face away from them. The trembling earth. The villagers gathered at the shrine stone in desperation. Drums beat in anxious rhythm. Nolia, pale and hollow-eyed, held her swollen belly, and her unborn child no longer moved. The chief fell to his knees and declared a village fast. But when night fell, the tremors began again. Low. Deep. Hungry. The earth opened near the village well. The water hissed and boiled, then disappeared. A small boy named Tembo screamed at the sight of a long serpent tail slithering beneath the cracked soil. The people fell into chaos. And then, just as fear threatened to tear them apart, she came. Linda's return. She stepped out of the forest not as a monster, but as something between woman and God. Her form shimmered like a memory, tall, golden-skinned, her lower body a serpent's coil carved from moonlight and obsidian. Her hair danced like vines in the wind. Her eyes held the grief of 1,000 seasons. The villagers dropped to their knees in terror. But Linda did not strike them. She did not roar. She stood quietly on the village square, where the shrine once held the spirit totem, now cracked and split. I did not come to curse you, she said, her voice low as a prayer. I came because the guardian has fallen. They looked around in confusion. She turned her gaze toward Nolia, who clutched her belly tighter. The man you mocked, the man you chased from your fires. He carried your shame like a shield, and when I fell beneath a tree, broken and near death, it was he who lifted me. Baraka, the one you called cursed, is guardian of the boundary. And he broke the pact to be loved by the same mouths that spat on his name. Whispers turned to sobs. Some women covered their faces in shame. The chief beat his chest and wailed. Baraka's plea. From behind the gathered crowd, a figure emerged. No longer cloaked in the glow of youth and forest strength, Baraka's body looked like a man broken by time. The mask had lifted. His shoulders slouched again. Wrinkles folded deep into his cheeks. His robes hung loose, his hands trembled. But his voice, when it came up, held clarity. I am Baraka. Silence. I sought only to be seen. To feel that I mattered again. And for that, I traded my truth for a lie. He turned to Nolia. You never knew me. You loved the ghost. Then to Lindail. And you offered me everything when I had nothing. I wore the crown and spat on the hand that gave it. Tears streamed down his cheeks. I begged not for mercy, but for the chance to make it right. The final choice. Lindail slithered toward him, coiling around the shrine ruins. Her face showed no judgment, only sorrow. The spirits are angry. The boundary between the human and spirit world has torn. The thing beneath the river of bones has awakened. Gasps. Cries. But all is not yet lost. There is a way to mend the breach. Baraka raised his head. Tell me. Lindail placed a hand on his shoulder. The village held its breath. You must come back with me. Return to Nzala-Yoma. Forever. No more visits. No more masks. You will live where the world does not bow to vanity or vengeance. Baraka glanced at the villagers. Some looked away. A few mouthed apologies. Nolia met his gaze, her face a storm of shame, regret, and something like understanding. He turned back to Lindail. And nodded. Yes. She offered her hand. Then walk with me, guardian. The final walk. They watched him pass. Baraka, once mocked, cursed, forgotten, walked beside the serpent queen. He did not look back. He did not weep. As his feet crossed the edge of the forest, the winds changed. The earth stilled. The skies parted. A soft rain began to fall, not violent, but healing. Rivers stirred beneath cracked soil. A baby cried. A tree bloomed again. Nzala-Yoma had opened her eyes. Final line. The man they laughed at became a legend. And the forest never cried again, the end.